Good afternoon, everyone. This is a webinar about Tflow Approval, specifically Tflow Approval 2.0, but if I look at the list of people, I'm assuming that most of you are not familiar with what Tflow Approval actually is, so I will give an introduction to the system, highlighting the new functionalities in Tflow Approval 2 as I go along. As you probably know, Tflow Approval is a product from a company called Tucana, which is a US company out of San Diego. They have a number of solutions. Tflow Approval is a web-based approval system. They also have something that is called Tflow Production, and we'll see that pop up a little bit, just a bit during this webinar. If you haven't seen it, it deserves an hour of explanation by itself, and we have recorded webinars that talk about that webinar as well. So what is Tflow Approval? Let's start with that, and I only have 2 or 3 slides. After that, we will go into a demo of the product because that's way more interesting. But I want to start at least with the basics. What is Tflow Approval? And basically, it is an online approval system. What it is something that is installed on a web server that allows you to log on, supply files, look at files, approve them, comment on them, and so on. It is totally browser-based. That's a first important note. And even more important is the fact that it is HTML5 based, which means that it works just about everywhere. So any modern browser will support Tflow Approval, both from a job creation or order creation point of view, but also from a client point of view, the client who comes and watches a proof and then gives comments or approves. So that will work in any modern browser, and that includes tablets and phones. Now, a phone is perhaps not the best medium to do this, but a tablet, for example, will definitely allow you to give comments on a job or approve a job in that way, because of the fact that it's HTML5 based, not Flash based, for example. And then I've said this can either be used in an independent way or it can be linked to other things, and that's also an important point. Tflow Approval by itself is a standalone approval system, and you can definitely buy it and implement it in that way. However, there are a number of interesting ways this can be linked to other parts of the workflow. First of all, as I go through the demo, you'll see that I'm doing a whole bunch of things in a manual way, creating orders and jobs and uploading jobs and so on. Well, all of that can be automated by an MIS system or an ordering system. If you have an MIS system and it's capable of saving an XML file based on some action that happens, then that XML file, if placed in the right folder on the Tflow Approval server, can automatically create orders, create jobs, import files into Tflow Approval, and so on. And in many big environments where Tflow Approval is used, this is actually the way the system is integrated. You have an MIS system and people create orders and jobs in the MIS system. That data through an XML file is simply handed over to Tflow Approval, which then takes care of the whole approval cycle that goes on towards external clients, for example. So that's definitely a possibility. The second way this can interact is the fact that it can be linked to a backend production system. The purpose of an approval system is that at some point there is an approved PDF file that comes out of it, a version of the file that is actually blessed by the client or clients that need to approve it. That file can automatically be placed into a folder where it could be picked up by some other production system like FileTrain, for example, or it can be automatically sent to Tflow Production. I already said that that second product was going to pop up during this conversation. Well, Tflow Production is, as the name says it, a production system, and Tflow Approval is capable of linking with that Tflow Production system so that any file that is approved is automatically sent to a particular queue in that Tflow production system. So that's a second way in which things can be linked. And then there is something that I don't even mention on this slide, but where you can also link Tflow approval with the creatives working at a client, for example, because there are plugins for the Adobe Creative Suite applications. And that means that someone working in Illustrator or in design can finish their artwork and then automatically transmit a PDF of that artwork to the Tflow approval system, where it flows into the job that was created for it. So that's, if you want, another way where the system can be linked. Now, what are the benefits? And this should be fairly obvious, of course. First of all, this shortens review cycles. By having everything in one place, which is the second point I have on here, the files themselves, different versions of the files, the comments that people make, that different people make, by having all of that in one place in an online system or an online reachable system, that means that the whole review cycle can be much faster. Comments will be communicated faster, and the final artwork will be available faster as well. Another important point is that there is built-in quality control. There is actually inside of Tflow approval the possibility to have a PDF toolbox, a Callas PDF toolbox pre-flight profile. And that means that any file that is sent to Tflow approval is automatically pre-flighted, and the pre-flight errors and warnings are automatically shown to whoever needs to approve that file as well. So you have that quality control built into your workflow from the very start of the workflow, which means that you know very, very well what you are approving and what possible problems with it could be. The next point, of course, is that this does not require any installation of any kind at the client side. That means that I can invite as many clients as I want, and they can use their browser to give comments, watch the files, and approve the files without having to install software. In some environments, especially heavily regulated environments, this is quite important. Okay, let me close this keynote. So what we wanted to do was go into a demo, of course. What I need is a browser, obviously. So what we're looking at here is a demo server of Tflow approval. This particular one, I believe, is running somewhere in the US. This is the login screen. So what I've done is I simply went to that URL, and then I get a login screen that appears. And now this is important, that this is one of the major new things in Tflow Approval 2.0. What you're seeing here is that I have the ability to log in, and my data was remembered and is already filled in. But I also have the possibility to sign up for an account. And that means that if the server is configured in that way, in this open way, if you want, that any client who gets the link to the Tflow approval server that you're running will be able to create their own account. They just need to fill out their details, and then they will get a new account that is created. And this can be configured in a number of different ways. Of course, you could configure it in a closed way where I need to have a username and a password. I can set it up totally open so that anyone can just create an account and start using the system. Of course, that will be governed by the permissions that people have, and you can definitely give different people different permissions in the whole system, so that they can, for example, only see part of the proofs that are on the system, or they can see but not comment, or they can comment but not approve. All of that can, of course, be arranged. But still, I can make this totally open so that anyone can just go to this form and create their own account. Or I can do something in between where I say, well, yes, anyone can go here and create their own account, but it will need to be approved by an administrator before they can actually start using it. So there are different ways you can get going with the system. Now, in my case, I already have an email address and a password, and I'm just going to sign in. And the second big change in Tflow Approval 2.0 is immediately obvious here as well, and that's the dashboard. And the dashboard that we're looking at here gives you an overview of all of the relevant data on this server. And of course, this is again limited by the permissions that you have on the system. I'm an administrator here, so I can see anything that happens on this server. But of course, you can limit that for certain people as well. When you look at the dashboard, there's a few things that are really, really helpful. For example, there is an overview of the different jobs that you have in this system. And I have an indication with this chart here of what the status is of these jobs that I have here. And you can see that there are different statuses that I can have. A job could be awaiting approval, for example. It could be approved but not yet sent to production. Again, as an administrator, when I set this up, I have control over which of these things I need and what a typical workflow for me is. To comment on that in a generic way, typically what will happen is that you will create an order, someone will upload artwork for one of the jobs in that order, and then it goes through these stages. A job can be awaiting approval. Someone could ask for a new revision to a job. That is something that you'll see popping up here as well. Sometimes a job can be waiting for artwork. So either because someone has not supplied a file yet, or because someone requested a new revision and the job is waiting for that new file to be uploaded. Then it can be approved, but not yet sent to production, which is an optional step that you can have in there if you want. And then once it has been released to production, it will be going to the released stage. Of course, there is also a canceled state for any files or jobs that finally were canceled by someone so that they never go on to production. So you get an overview of the level of jobs that you have in the system and what status they find themselves in. I also have, for the orders in the system, I have an overview of what is new and what currently is active. You can also see some activity here. I have a way to look at capacity that will tell me whether the number of jobs that I have going through the system, whether that surpasses or not the number of people I have working with this system. And I have user stats that give me an overview of the users registered on that system, which could be either administrators or clients, and then an overview of what they have been doing, how many jobs they have in these different statuses. So the dashboard is really great to get an overview over all of what you find in the system. And actually, I can either look at stats or at activity, which gives me a list of everything that happened in Tflow Approval on this server. I can further select what I want here as well. And I'll come back to that when we have created an order and a job and you understand how the system works, but there is a lot of filtering that you can do here as well. The first thing that we can do is go to orders, and what you can see is a list of orders in the system, filtered out already a little bit, so all of the orders that are new in this case. I can see the full list of orders if I want to as well. And then I can look at these orders, sort them in this table view, or I can look at them represented by a little thumbnail icon and some details. And you can see already that some of these are marked, please check order in here, because something needs to happen to that particular order. What I want to do first of all, though, is I want to show you how you can create a new order. And as I said in the beginning, of course, this is the manual way of creating things. And in an ideal world, you would probably enter the order information and job information in an MIS system and have that linked to Tflow Approval. So you don't have to go through the manual creation, but I will show you how that works anyway. To create a new order, I click a new order in here, and then I have the possibility to enter information about that order. And information about that order can either be basic, that's what I'm looking at right now, basic order settings, or I can go to advanced order settings where I have some more options. So let's start with the basic stuff and say that I'm creating an order today. So that's fine. I want that order to be ready by, let's say, November 1st. So the requested ship date. I'm going to give that order a name, and let's get the PDF file that we want to use here. Give that a matching name. So we'll give that today's dates, for example, and then shoes for you. This is the order, of course, but I can link that order either to myself as 4Ps, or I can link it to one of the client companies, the other companies that have been created in this system. And as an administrator, I can set up as many companies as I want. Again, there are no restrictions to anything, number of clients, number of jobs, anything like that. I can set up as many companies as I want. And the intention of setting up a company is that if I select a company for this particular order, that will determine who gets to see that order. So if I have a user who belongs to a different company in here, they will, of course, not be allowed to see the jobs and orders for other companies in the system. Again, as an administrator, I am able to see orders and jobs for anything and anyone in the system, but this is a very neat way to subdivide who has access rights for what information in the system. I can give a description for my order if I want to. I'm not going to do that right now, but I am going to ask here to create a new job after creating the order. And this is important. This is an important part of how Tflow Approval works. You have this two-step system in here where at the highest level you have orders, and then the level beyond that is jobs. So I can create an order, and the next thing that I will do is create 1 or 2 or 3, how many I want actually, jobs inside of that order. How should you think about that? Well, different companies have different ways to work with that, but I could, for example, have a shoes for you campaign, let's call it that, and then I could have a brochure in that and a banner and maybe some point of sales material that I want to create. So the order is the highest level of grouping of information, and then the different jobs that I create in there would represent the individual files that I want to submit as part of that campaign. Each job has a file associated with it, a file that will be quality controlled, where someone can give comments, and that will finally be approved or disapproved. So that's the basic order settings. If you want, you can go to advanced and then set up a number of additional things in here, as I said. And what I could do here is say, well, first of all, what is the Calas PDF Toolbox profile that is going to be used for quality control? Now, this is at the order level, and an order, as I said, can contain multiple jobs. And perhaps these jobs need to be pre-flighted in a separate way. That is totally possible. What I'm going to do here is select Offset Sheetfed, which is a pretty generic Gantt workgroup-based pre-flight profile. Once I get to the stage where I create my jobs inside this order, the default profile will now be Offset Sheetfed for any job that I create inside of that order. But I can still modify that. So if I know that there is a banner in there, I can create a job in this order and then modify the pre-flight profile for that job to a profile that is suitable for banners. So again, you have full control over how you set this up, but what you set at the order level is the default that will be used for any new job that I create in here later on. The same goes for these pop-ups that I have in the middle. And these actually specify who in the system has access to each of the functions for that particular order and the jobs in it. First of all, who has the access rights to upload artwork? And I could say that that is only me, for example. Who has the permission to approve that? And perhaps that is not me, but some of the other people in the system. And then there is a final stage. If you set up the system that you need this, there is a final stage where someone will be responsible for releasing a job that is approved into the production system. So all of these can be set up in to different groups of people or different people. And again, this is the default for all of the jobs that are created in this particular order, but you can modify it for each individual job as you want. And then the last part in here, again, refers to Tflow production. If you want, in the setup, you can link this Tflow approval server to a Tflow production server. And what that will do is give you a list of all of the queues that are available on that Tflow production system. And you will here be able to select when a job is released, so approved and then released to production, which input queue it will be sent to in the production system. So this allows you to set up some of that integration with a backend production system if that backend production system happens to be Tflow production. So I'm going to go ahead and create that order. And because I've asked Tflow Approval to also create a job for me when I create an order, I immediately get this new dialog box to create a job. And this follows the same setup. I have basic settings and advanced settings. And you can see that some of the information is already filled in. I have the name of the order that we created, the company that I selected for that, and the creation and requested ship date. Again, I can simply go in here and change the requested ship date for this particular job. But by default, it's set to what came in with the order. Now, I can give this a PO number, which probably makes more sense if it comes out of an MIS system automatically again, but you can do it manually as well. And I can give this a name. And what I'll do to keep things manageable here is I'll just give it the same name and then say, let's call this banner. So I'm creating a job that is for a banner. So if I go to advanced job settings, I might now want to go, as I explained before, I might want to go into my collection of pre-flight profiles, and perhaps I want to select large format in here instead of the sheet-fed offset for this particular job. Similarly, I can change who is allowed to upload the artwork, approve, and release, and then I can still connect this to a different queue in Tflow production if I wanted to do that as well. Now, the people that you have here are important because Tflow Approval will use your choices here to determine who has the right permissions to do something with this job. So who will be able to upload artwork in this particular job, but it will also use the information about these users to send out notifications. If I save this job, when you look at the list of jobs that I have here, I can see my banner job that I just created. Just the same, I can see waiting for artwork here. And again, because I have the correct access rights, it will tell me upload artwork. So I can go ahead and reopen that job panel here and simply go into my PDF file folder and drag the PDF file that I want on here. Now, I don't know whether you noticed that, and let me cancel this and go back to upload artwork, but you can also support other file formats. Because Tflow Approval has PDF Toolbox incorporated, any file format that can be handled by PDF Toolbox can also be handled by Tflow Approval if you choose to do so. And that means that TIFF PNG and JPEG images, for example, will work. PostScript EPS, Office files will work. PDF files, of course, will work. Of course, if you, for some of these things, specifically Office files, you will need to have, let me drag a file on top of here in the meantime, and we'll say upload. If you want to support Office files, you will need to have Office or OpenOffice implemented on the server that Tflow Approval is using. So that you have to make sure for. The other file formats are supported by PDF Toolbox out of the box, and you don't need to do anything special for that. Conversion from images and EPS and so on is simply included. Now, while I was talking, something else interesting happened that is also new in Tflow Approval 2.0. I had at the top right, you could immediately see the preview in here, but at the top right it said pre-flighting. In Tflow Approval 2.0, the pre-flight starts automatically, and whenever the pre-flight is done, your window will refresh, and it shows you a preview, and it shows you what the result was of that pre-flight. And if I click here, you can see all of the messages. It doesn't show any badges on here or anything like that, because what I have here is basically something that is informational and then some other fixes that were done to the file. So there is nothing to really give an error about or warn about. Something else that you should notice is that it says awaiting approval on here, but it actually is not a button. I can't click this and do something. And the reason, of course, is how I set up the job. If you remember how we configured this job, I was in the list of people that were responsible for uploading artwork, but I was not in the list of people that were responsible for approval or releasing to production. So I cannot, for this job, do the approval step myself. One of the people listed as responsible for that will need to pick that up and do that for me. What I can do, though, is I can add comments, and I could say this is a horrible color, which is true because it's pink basically. So I can add that on here, and I can highlight where exactly I want this. Let me see if my mouse wants to cooperate a little bit. There we go. So I can make comments on here. Someone else could reply on my comments, and then you get the typical email threaded view with the original comment and then the reply that someone else made on here. Of course, because this is web-based, as soon as I make comments on here, those comments are visible to anyone else who happens to be looking at this job as well. So even though I'm not responsible for approval here, I can still add a comment. I did get those permissions. I can still add a comment. And if I go back to order now, you can see that, again, the status in here changed to awaiting approval, and it did not again, it does not allow me to specify or to actually go to the approval stage. What I can still do, and I want to return just a second to this preview screen for the job, what I can still do is, again, depending on the permissions that I have in the system, I can send out an invitation to someone else. So I can send out a review invitation to other people, and I simply need their email address. And when you do that, that person will get an email that invites them, if they click on the link in it, invites them to this Tflow approval system. But they don't even need to have an account on this Tflow approval system. This will just give them access to this particular proof. They can do the review that they want to do, add comments and so on, and that's it. Of course, you could add them to Tflow approval system and set up permissions for them and give them a role and so on, and from that point on they are a first-class citizen of Tflow approval. But in some cases, the only thing you want to do is send this to a coworker, for example, and say, can you have a look at this and make sure that this particular piece of information is correct? Well, this system allows you to send out an invitation like that without having to go through the additional burden of setting them up in the system and everything else. So a very simple way to send out invitations. What I can also do is download information from the Tflow approval site. And let's maybe begin with this one here. That's the original PDF. So if I click that, I can download the original PDF file from the Tflow approval server. I can also download the pre-flight PDF file, of course. This is the one that is ready to be approved. This is also the one that has fixes applied to it. I could download a low-res version, or I could download the full pre-flight report as well. Again, these things are dependent on how the system is exactly configured by the administrator, but you have the possibility, at least in Tflow Approval, to download all of these pieces of information that may help you decide whether this job needs to be approved or not. So let's go back to orders for a second, and let me open up another order I have in here, simply because this shows you that this is indeed an order with 3 different jobs inside, and you can see the order in each case and the job number or job name in each case. They're all for the same company. They mostly have the same information, but they're at different stages in the process. The first one is awaiting approval, and I can either open up the job or I can do whatever I need to do here. The second one says waiting for artwork, so this doesn't even have a PDF file uploaded yet. And then the last one that I have here is has been approved, so this file is actually good, but it is now awaiting release. So it is awaiting permission from someone to be sent to the production system. Let me go into awaiting approval for just a second. So we just click on this. And again, this shows you that because on this job I am actually in the list of people that are allowed to approve, I have these possibilities. So green is obvious, the file is good. Red is also obvious, the file is not good, and I don't want to continue with this document. But I can also ask for a new revision. And a new revision means that typically I would enter some comments on this job, and then I will say, well, can you implement these comments and send me a new version of the file. And these revisions are automatically stored inside of Tflow Approval as well. And you can actually see that very well here. It says revision 2 of 2, and if I look at the complete file, let me zoom out a little bit. So if I look at the complete file, this is revision 2 of 2, but if I go to revision 1, then you can see that this is indeed a different document. I no longer have the ability to approve, I no longer have the ability to make comments because this is an old revision. But it is stored, and I can use this to see what the difference is between these revisions, for example, or to verify that everything that I asked for was indeed implemented in this system. And when I would approve this, so if we go to approve, are you sure? Yes, I am sure. So I have now approved it for production, and because Tflow Approval, this demo server, has been set up in this way, I have this last step in the process where someone is responsible for saying, now send it to the production system and release it. And then once I do that, the job is totally gone here, and it's now mentioned as released final. So if we go back to orders, we'll see, well, actually, I have my order here, and I look at the jobs. You can see that one is now totally finalized. I have to watch the time here because we're almost where we need to stop, but this is an overview of what you can do in Tflow Approval. If I go back a second and we go back to the dashboard, you can see that the image has changed a little bit here because I now also have a released job in there. So the dashboard, well, first of all, before we even logged on, I discussed the possibility that in Tflow Approval 2, you can configure the system in a very open or a very closed way, or something in between. Open means that anyone can make their own account on the Tflow Approval system. Closed means that an administrator needs to do that and then send you your information, and then the in-between would be that you make your own account, but it has to be approved by an administrator. So that was a big change. If you log in, you immediately see the second big change, which is the dashboard. And that dashboard, of course, allows me to get an overview of what happened in the system. If we go to activity, for example, you can see all of the changes I have been doing here to these orders and jobs as we were doing this this webinar. So all of these things were done as I was doing the webinar. So that dashboard is a very nice additional feature where you can see all of the activity or just the activity during this week or just the activity today or during the last month. And I can also filter not just on the date or the period of time. I can also select individual users and see what they have done. I could select, so select all. I could also select different companies that were created in here to see only what, for example, one of my clients has been working on, or for a particular client, how many jobs are waiting for approval or waiting for artwork, and where are they with these things. So an immediate overview. And then what we went through in the demo is creating an order, which is the high-level concept inside of Tflow Approval, and then creating a number of jobs inside that order in a manual way. Now, I talked about the interaction with MIS systems as well, where you can link this up so that orders and jobs would appear in the system automatically. And if they are set up correctly, if the XML file that comes from the MIS contains the right information, then that would mean that the order and the job are created automatically, and that the correct people are linked to that job, and so that the correct emails would be automatically sent out with an invitation to comment on the job or approve on the job as well. So all of that can be happening in a very automated way. Now, the last thing I want to do before I look at any questions there might be is I want to open up one of these little guys here, and I'm going to open it up in Illustrator CC. And the reason I'm going to open it up is that I very briefly want to show you the plugin or the control panel that you have inside of Illustrator for Tflow Approval. So if I go to Window and I go to Extensions, there is a Tflow Approval connector in here. This is very simple. What I can do is, and I won't go through all the steps, but I want to show you how this works in principle at least. What you will do is set up these settings once, and that is the link to the approval server, your username and password on that approval server. You can set it to auto login so that each time you launch Illustrator and you open up this panel, it automatically launches or it automatically connects to that Tflow Approval server. And then once you've done that, I have the submit job, and I have this job parameter or job information window. I can automatically now create a preview PDF of my Illustrator file, which can be very useful because this allows me to select the output settings that I want, PDF settings that I want, and it will create a PDF using those PDF settings so that I can verify that actually the correct thing happened, which probably looking at the preview here, it didn't happen. So that's why you go through that preview step. And then once you know that the file is correct, I can hit submit here. Now, in order to do that, I need to enter some information here, and it would take me too long now to do that. But if I enter that information, I can submit the file immediately to Tflow Approval, and that means that just as with the MIS system, the information would flow into Tflow Approval automatically. So if I have a job that is waiting for artwork, and I have a creative that is using Illustrator or InDesign, they can use this plugin to automatically submit PDF files into the jobs that are waiting for artwork in this case. So if I look at any of the ones that is awaiting artwork, this is already a stage too far, then I could submit the PDF automatically in there. which is a nice way to link that part of the creative process into the rest of the online approval system as well. Let me see what questions we came up with during that. Well, I'm guessing that's not a real question, but thank you, Paul. Paul wanted to know whether the color is definitely horrible. I think so, even though I didn't calibrate my monitor. So that is true. And that is actually a good point, and that was your next question, Paul. Can you check that a user has calibrated their monitor? No, you cannot. The purpose of this system really is to look more at content approval and the annotation workflow or the cooperation workflow around the content of the file and comments on the text is correct or incorrect or this is missing and can you change that. It is not so much on is this the correct color. You cannot display something in a color accurate way inside of Tflow Approval. There are other solutions obviously that can do that, such as Remote Director. But Tflow Approval focuses more on the collaboration part and on the creative workflow before that stage, if you want. Can I print out the comments? That is actually a good question, and I'm not totally sure what the answer is. I believe you can, but I would have to look that up. So that's something I will get back to you on, Stefan. Is there a plugin for other Adobe products? At the moment, I believe it is only Adobe Illustrator and Adobe InDesign. As you could see, the plugin is relatively simple by itself. These plugins were developed because a number of customers asked for Illustrator and InDesign support. I'm sure that if there are other use cases or other things that you would like to do, that is possible. So let us know what other Adobe product you had in mind, whether it's Photoshop or something else altogether. Let us know what you have in mind and we can look into that. Is it possible to create a 3D preview, for example, for a book? No, at the moment that is not. I know that that is a feature that is on the feature request list, but at the moment that is not included in here. If it gets included, one of the priorities again would be that it can be done in such a way that it does not require Flash or anything like that, just to keep the interface available on all possible platforms. Well, you might think that people would not use something like an iPad to approve a job. Unfortunately, I think it is relatively common these days to use whatever you have at hand to look at a file. So, of course, that is not good from a color calibration point of view, but that's not what this product is mainly targeted at anyway. And I can see cases where a simple approval of a job would actually make sense from an iPad. So whatever we add to the product, we want to make sure that it is always available on as many platforms as possible. Okay, if there is anyone else who has a problem then, or a question rather, then let me know. I think I answered all of the questions that I've seen so far. Which MIS systems are supported right now? Well, in principle, any MIS system is supported, but it is true that it takes a little bit of configuration. So there is no built-in JDF connector or JDF connectivity or anything like that. It really works on the basis of an XML file. Let me show you. I think I have a very simple example here. So there is an XML format that is defined by Tflow Approval, and if you follow this format, so if your MIS system is capable of exporting an XML file that follows that particular schema, then and drops it into the correct folder on the server, then Tflow Approval will automatically read those XML files and do whatever is requested in them, which can be create a new order, create a job, pick up a file for that job, and link the correct people with there. So in theory, that is possible for most MIS systems because I think almost all of them support XML export in some way. but it does require in some cases, if it's an MIS system that we didn't see yet, and I don't really have a list of systems on the top of my head, but I can get back to you with that. But if it's an MIS system that we haven't seen yet, it could require a couple of days of configuration and some interaction with the MIS vendor, for example, to make sure that it works. The zoom is, well, let me actually show that. That should not be too difficult to show you. So if I have a file here, you had the zoom out and zoom in buttons. In theory, you can zoom in to a pretty high degree, so I can zoom in quite a bit in here. But as you can see, you get pixelation. So what you're looking at is not a it's not the PDF file itself that you're looking at. It's simply a rendered bitmap version of that PDF. Now, you could configure the system so that the bitmap is a little bit higher resolution. You don't want to make it too high because there is no pixel on demand that is going on here, or like you have in Remote Director again, for example. You don't have that here. You're simply looking at this bitmap, and if you make this bitmap too high resolution, it's going to slow down anyone who is watching the preview. So you can zoom in as much as it makes sense for this particular file, depending on the resolution of the preview that you have created. Viewing single separations is not supported at the moment. That is on the list and would be relatively trivial to implement because, again, we have PDF Toolbox incorporated into Tflow Approval, and PDF Toolbox supports the creation of separation preview images and a bunch of other preview images like total area coverage and so on. So it's something that is not in there but is on the list. Can Tflow Approval communicate to an MIS system? If you put it that way, no. It can consume the information that comes out of an MIS system. Beyond that, everything is possible, of course. At some point, there is going to be information about the jobs that are approved. I gave the example of sending those jobs to Tflow production or to something like FileTrain, but that could just as well be a complete a job system like a Prenergy or an Agfa Apogee or something like that picks these things up. And on the same level, you can imagine that the information that comes out of Tflow Approval would be used in some kind of integration to then communicate back to the MIS system. But it is not something that is supported out of the box. And I think that also answers your question, Paul, about integration with RIP systems and so on. Yes, that's out of the scope, if you want, for Tflow Approval. The scope for Tflow Approval is to supply a file that is correct and that has been approved by the client. And then what you do with that file afterwards, the rest of the workflow is left up to another system. And like I said, that could be Tflow production. It could also be an automation system like FileTrain or Switch, or it could be something like Prenergy, or perhaps the file is dumped immediately into a hot folder for an EFI, a Fury, RIP, for example. All of these things can be set up as they need be, but it's outside of the scope for Tflow Approval itself. I think I already answered this question, but just to make sure, can I see separations and measure amount of ink before approval? So the answer to that is no. It would be relatively trivial to implement something in here in this preview where you can do that. The only way you can do that at the moment is if you download the pre-flighted PDF and open it, for example, in PDF Toolbox, where in PDF Toolbox, of course, you have that separation preview and the ink measurement, and then afterwards you could approve based on what you see there. But I understand that is a bit of a workaround, and that it would be nicer to have these features implemented straight into the preview. I know that's on the list. If that's an urgent feature or a deal breaker for you, then just talk to us, and we'll see how that can be implemented, or what would be needed to get that implemented in the product. If you have any more questions, simply send us an email. You can reach us at info@4ps.com or support@4ps.com for more technical questions. Like I said, don't forget that these webinars, all of our webinars, are recorded, and that you can go to support.4ps.com, and in the tutorial section there you have a full overview of all of these webinar recordings, so that you can review parts of this one, or you can look at any of the other topics that interests you. So thank you for joining, and have a great rest of the day.